The moment Sarah Johnson opened the door to the visiting room, her world collapsed. There, in the distance, sitting on a plastic chair, was her son. Ethan Carter's left eye was bruised a deep purple, and his right cheek bore a long, unhealed scratch, red and swollen. One side of his lip was split, crusted with a scab, and vivid scratch marks, as if clawed by fingernails, stood out on the back of his neck and below his ear. Ethan. Ethan. Sarah's steps quickened as she rushed toward her son. The closer she got, the more horrific his injuries appeared. His left arm was in a cast, and his hand was marred with dark bruises. Red welts dotted his wrist, visible through the sleeve of his uniform. "Mom, why are you here?" As Ethan lifted his head to look at Sarah, she collapsed on the spot. Ethan's eyes were filled with fear and despair. The clumsy but brave smile he'd shown a month ago when he enlisted was gone, replaced by the haunted look of a deeply wounded child. "Ethan, what is this? What happened?" Sarah pulled her son into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. For over 20 years, she had served as a soldier, coolly handling countless crises. But in this moment, she was at a loss. Her pride as Fort Bragg's first female 2-star division commander, her hard-earned image as a tough leader, all of it meant nothing. "Mom, it's okay. I just got hurt during training," Ethan said, his voice trembling, tearing at Sarah's heart. The sight of her 22-year-old son, so brutally injured yet trying not to worry her, was heartbreaking. As she examined each wound, clutching his shoulders, it was clear to anyone that these weren't from a simple training accident. "Ethan, tell me, who did this to you?" But Ethan only shook his head, silent. His eyes brimmed with fear. Sarah instinctively knew he wanted to speak but was held back by some unspeakable secret. Throughout the visit, Sarah held her son tightly. Rank, authority, none of it mattered now. Only one thing was certain. Something had happened to her son, and she would uncover the truth. How did she resolve this shocking situation? A stunning twist awaits. But first, hit that subscribe and like button, and a bit of luck might come your way today, leaving the base after the visit. Sarah's steps were heavy. The reality of leaving her son behind was cruel. She cried for a long time in her car before calming down, but anger soon overpowered her grief. The fact that someone had done this to her son was unforgivable. The next morning, Sarah went straight to the commanding officer of Ethan's basic training unit at Fort Bragg. Colonel Robert Hayes greeted her with an awkward smile. Normally, she'd have observed protocol with fellow commanders, but today, she was there as a mother. "Colonel Hayes, what's going on with my son?" Her voice carried both desperation and fury. Colonel Hayes hesitated, rifling through papers before responding. "Oh, you mean Private Carter. It was an accident during training. He's already received first aid and is being treated at the medical unit." "An accident? You're saying his body covered in wounds is an accident?" Sarah's voice rose, but Colonel Hayes remained calm. "He fell during combat training. New recruits often struggle to control their movements, so this happens sometimes. It's not a big deal." Sarah's gut told her something was off. Colonel Hayes's tone sounded too rehearsed, as if he'd practiced his response. Moreover, Ethan's injuries were clearly not from a simple fall. "Then can you show me the detailed incident report? It's still being drafted. We'll send it to you once it's complete." Sarah couldn't take it anymore. Her years of military experience told her this kind of evasion meant something was being hidden. Leaving the base, she began contacting Ethan's barracks mates, but every recruit stayed silent. None would say what had happened to Ethan. She could see the same fear in their eyes that she'd seen in her son's. A few days later, Sarah found an unexpected clue. During the visit, Ethan had slipped her a small notebook. Inside were his daily entries from military life. "Sergeant Michael Brooks called me out again today. I don't know why, but he keeps picking on me. The others don't get this treatment. Why just me? I got hit again. This time, he punched me in the stomach several times. I could barely breathe. He told me not to tell anyone." Sergeant Brooks said, "Your mom's a division commander? That means nothing here. I'm in charge." Sarah's hands trembled as she read. The notebook detailed the abuse her son had endured for a month, not just bullying, but systematic, relentless violence. The name Sergeant Michael Brooks appeared repeatedly. Sarah immediately began investigating who this person was. After days of digging, she uncovered a shocking truth. Sergeant Brooks was the son of the unit's company commander and, more disturbingly, a distant relative of the current Army Deputy Chief of Staff. This explained why the commander was covering it up. The perpetrator wasn't just a senior soldier, but someone connected to the military's upper echelons, which is why the unit was trying to bury the incident. But Sarah wouldn't let this slide. She promptly filed a formal complaint with the higher command. The response, as expected, was dismissive. "It's under internal investigation. Please wait." Worse, a few days later, she received a warning call. "General Johnson, don't blow this out of proportion. The entire Army's reputation is at stake." At that moment, Sarah realized this wasn't just about one perpetrator. It was a cover-up involving the entire military structure. A week after filing the complaint, there was no progress. Instead, things worsened. Ethan was isolated in the medical unit under the pretext of treatment, and visits were restricted. The unit claimed it was for his recovery, but Sarah knew it was to silence him. Then, something even more shocking happened. She received a call from the Department of Defense Inspector General's office, stating she was under investigation for abusing her authority as a division commander by interfering in her son's case. "This is absurd! When did I abuse my authority?" Sarah protested before the inspector, but the response was cold. "Reports indicate you interfered with another unit's operations and disrupted internal investigations. There's also intelligence suggesting you plan to leak this to the media." Sarah was dumbfounded. How could a victim's family seeking the truth be accused of abusing authority? Even more astonishing was how meticulously these measures had been orchestrated. That evening, alone at home, Sarah reread Ethan's journal. The more she read, the angrier she became. The entries vividly described the brutality her son had endured. "Sergeant Brooks took me behind the barracks today. He kicked me in the stomach multiple times. I collapsed, struggling to breathe, but he kept kicking. While I was washing my face in the bathroom, he grabbed my hair and slammed my head into the sink. My forehead bled, but he told me not to go to the medical unit. Everyone in the barracks knows, but no one helps. They're scared of Sergeant Brooks." The final page laid bare Ethan's despair. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know the military would be this terrifying. Every day feels like hell. But I can't tell you because I don't want to worry you." Sarah closed the journal and bowed her head. Tears streamed down her face. The organization she'd served for over 20 years, the military she'd risked her life to protect, was this corrupt? It was devastating. 2 days later, even more shocking news arrived. Ethan had been rushed to the emergency room. The unit claimed he'd suddenly lost consciousness during treatment, but Sarah was skeptical. Rushing to the hospital, she saw Ethan lying in the ER and broke down again. He was conscious, but his eyes were lifeless. The doctor diagnosed acute stress reaction due to psychological trauma. "Ethan, Mom's here. It's okay now." But Ethan barely reacted, just staring into space, muttering, "I'm scared I'll get beaten again. Please get me out of here." At that moment, Sarah made a decision. She could no longer care about the organization's pressures. With her son this broken, rank and reputation meant nothing. Just then, her phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at 3 p.m. tomorrow at a cafe in downtown Raleigh. I have information about Private Carter's case." Sarah was wary but desperate. She decided to go, hoping to uncover the truth behind her son's suffering. The next afternoon, Sarah arrived at the cafe in Raleigh. Sitting in a quiet corner, she waited until a man in his mid-30s cautiously approached. "General Johnson, I'm Daniel Harris." The name sounded familiar. 5 years ago, in Afghanistan? Yes, you saved my life back then. Daniel was a former intelligence operative under Sarah's command. During an enemy ambush, she'd personally led a rescue operation to save him. Now a civilian, he still had contacts within the military. "I know the full story of Private Carter's case." The USB Daniel handed her contained shocking evidence. Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she took it. her heart pounding at the thought that the truth about her son's ordeal was inside this small device. Daniel glanced around before continuing in a low voice. "General, this case is far more complex than you think. Sergeant Brooks isn't just a perpetrator. There's a larger network behind him." Sarah took a deep breath. She'd suspected as much. But hearing it confirmed was still jarring. "What's in here, specifically?" "Everything's on the USB. Audio of Brooks abusing Private Carter, conversations of superiors trying to cover it up, all of it." Daniel explained that, after leaving the military, he'd been monitoring corruption within the ranks. He'd stumbled upon Ethan's case and began gathering evidence to repay the debt he felt he owed Sarah. "You saved my life. Now it's my turn to help save your son." Leaving the cafe, Sarah headed straight home to review the USB's contents. Plugging it into her computer, she found neatly organized audio, video, and document files. Playing the first audio file, her face contorted. "Hey, Carter, your mom's a division commander. That means nothing here. I'm the law. Got it?" It was Sergeant Brooks's voice, followed by the sound of blows and Ethan's groans. "Please, stop. What did I do wrong? You don't need to do anything wrong. I hit you because I feel like it. Tell your mom, and you're dead." The recording continued, capturing Brooks's brutal treatment of Ethan, far beyond mere discipline. It was sadistic violence. The second file was even more shocking, containing conversations of unit officers plotting to cover up the incident. "Colonel Hayes, this can't leak. You know who Brooks is related to, right?" "I know. But the victim's mother is a division commander. She won't let this go easily. That's why the Inspector General's office is investigating her for abuse of authority. We'll turn the tables." Sarah clenched her fists. They were framing the victim's family to cover their crimes, a meticulously planned scheme. The third file included a conversation involving the Army Deputy Chief of Staff. "Sir, what about the Brooks case?" "Cover it up, obviously. I won't let my nephew face a court-martial. If the victim's side makes noise, make them the problem. The investigation into General Johnson has already started. Well done. This is a good chance to get rid of her, too." Sarah couldn't listen anymore. The betrayal of the organization she'd served for decades fueled both rage and despair. But there was also hope. She now had undeniable evidence to expose the truth. The final file contained grainy CCTV footage from the base, clearly showing Brooks beating Ethan. This video alone could prove the case. After reviewing everything, Sarah sat in deep thought, weighing how to use this evidence and bring the truth to light. One thing was clear: she couldn't back down. Just then, her phone rang. It was the Department of Defense Inspector General's office. "General Johnson, report by 10 a.m. tomorrow for a formal investigation into your alleged abuse of authority." Hanging up, Sarah gave a bitter smile. They were trying to paint her as the criminal for seeking justice, but she wasn't afraid anymore. She had a powerful weapon now. "Fine, let's do this." Sarah secured the USB and prepared for the investigation. The real battle was about to begin. Would you like to continue to the next chapter? The next morning, Sarah rose earlier than usual and put on her uniform. She knew today would be the most critical day of her military career. Adjusting her insignia in front of the mirror, she vowed to stand not as a division commander, but as a soldier fighting for truth. At the Department of Defense Inspector General's office, several investigators were already waiting. The atmosphere was tense, far different from routine colleague inquiries. "General Johnson, please sit," the lead investigator said coldly, his tone formal. Sarah sat, scanning the room. The investigators surrounding her made it feel like a courtroom. "Reports indicate you've interfered with another unit's operations, disrupting the chain of command. Please explain." "I was only trying to uncover the truth about my son's assault. How is that abuse of authority?" The investigators flipped through documents, pressing further. "Witnesses say you pressured the unit during your visit. There's also evidence you intended to leak this to the media." "Leak to the media? I've done no such thing. I just wanted to know what happened to my son." But the questioning intensified, each query designed to corner her. It felt like they'd scripted a narrative to make her the villain. "Then how do you explain this recording?" The investigator played a conversation between Sarah and Colonel Hayes, but it was edited, completely distorting the context. That's been manipulated. Listen to the full conversation. We'll determine if it's edited. The issue is that you pressured another unit's commander. Sarah realized they'd planned to frame her from the start. Her son's case was irrelevant. Their goal was to eliminate her. Hold on. Sarah stood abruptly, startling the investigators. I'd like to present some materials. She pulled out the USB Daniel had given her. This contains evidence of the abuse my son, Private Carter, endured, as well as recordings of high-ranking officials attempting to cover it up. The investigators' faces froze. They hadn't expected this counterattack. Where did you get this? The source is questionable. The source doesn't matter. The content does. Listen. Sarah plugged in the USB and played the audio of Brooks assaulting Ethan. The room filled with Brooks's cruel voice. Carter, your mom's a division commander? That's worthless here. Ethan's groans and the sounds of violence followed. The investigators' expressions hardened. Is this what you call a training accident? Sarah continued, playing recordings of the cover-up, including Colonel Hayes' efforts to bury the case and the Deputy Chief of Staff protecting his nephew. With all this evidence, you still want to accuse me of abusing authority? The investigators exchanged glances, unable to respond. They knew they could no longer frame her. But the lead investigator made a final play. The legal validity of these materials needs review, and how you obtained them could be an issue. Legal validity? My son was nearly beaten to death. And you're worried about legalities? Sarah's voice trembled with anger. She'd had enough. Fine. I'll release these to the media and let the public decide. At that moment, the door opened, and a senior officer entered, the Army Deputy Chief of Staff. Seeing him, Sarah understood exactly who was behind this investigation. General Johnson. It's been a while, he said, his voice laced with menace. The real confrontation was about to begin. As the Deputy Chief of Staff entered, the room's atmosphere shifted. The investigators stood and saluted, but Sarah remained seated, her eyes burning with resolve. General Johnson, could you give us the room? The Deputy Chief of Staff gestured, and the investigators hurriedly left. Now, it was just Sarah and him. The air was thick with tension. It's a shame we're meeting like this, he said, sitting across from her with a cold smile. Sarah could see he was the mastermind behind it all. A shame? Are you referring to your nephew nearly killing my son? Watch your tone, General. Do you realize what you're doing? His voice grew threatening, but Sarah didn't flinch. I'm uncovering the truth. You're the one trying to bury it. Truth? You're blowing your son's weakness out of proportion, making it some grand scandal. Fury sparked in Sarah's eyes. She wouldn't tolerate her son being insulted. Say that again. I want to make sure I heard you right. You heard me. Kids these days are so soft, they call basic discipline assault. The Deputy Chief of Staff showed no remorse, speaking as if it were natural. Then is this just discipline? Sarah played the audio of Brooks's assault. The room echoed with the brutal sounds, but the Deputy Chief's expression didn't change. I don't know where you got this illegal recording, but it won't hold up in court. How about this one? Sarah played the recording of the Deputy Chief himself ordering the cover-up. I won't let my nephew face a court-martial. If the victim's side complains, make them the problem. For the first time, his face stiffened. He hadn't expected his own words to be recorded. You'll call this illegal, too? It's you ordering a cover-up. General, you may think you're clever, but this won't work. You'll only hurt yourself. He remained smug, but Sarah was certain now he'd never admit the truth willingly. Then I'll find another way. As Sarah stood, so did he. One last warning. General, don't escalate this. Think about your career and your future. Is that a threat? Not a threat, a suggestion. Choose wisely. After he left. Sarah stood still for a moment. She knew the moment of decision had come. Compromise with the system or fight for the truth. Then her phone rang. It was the hospital. Ethan's condition had worsened, requiring urgent psychiatric care. Sarah couldn't hesitate anymore. Leaving the Inspector General's office, she contacted reporters. If the system wouldn't deliver justice, she'd turn to the public. Hello, this is Sarah Johnson, former division commander. I want to report an organized assault and cover-up within the military. The reporter on the line was stunned. A sitting general whistleblowing was unprecedented. I'll hold a press conference tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'll present all the evidence, so please spread the word. Hanging up. Sarah took a deep breath. She'd crossed a point of no return, but she had no regrets. This was for her son and to fix a corrupt system. That night, Sarah went to the hospital where Ethan was admitted. Before the press conference, she wanted to draw strength from her son. At the psychiatric ward, the halls were silent, broken only by the occasional footsteps of medical staff. At Ethan's door, Sarah hesitated, afraid to face his condition. Opening the door, she saw Ethan lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. The joyful son who used to greet her was gone, replaced by a blank expression. Ethan, Mom's here. Sarah took his hand, but he didn't respond. The doctor had diagnosed severe PTSD. Ethan, tomorrow, Mom will expose everything. Those who did this to you will face justice. Slowly, Ethan turned to look at her. Fear still filled his eyes. Mom, will it really be okay? Won't they do something worse? His trembling voice revealed the depth of his trauma. Trust me, Ethan, you're not alone anymore. The truth will come out, and justice will win. Sarah hugged him tightly, and for the first time, Ethan clung to her, quietly sobbing. Mom, I'm sorry. This happened because I was weak. No, Ethan, it's not your fault. It's theirs. Never think you're to blame. That night, Sarah stayed by Ethan's side, preparing for the press conference but unwilling to leave him. The next day at 2 p.m., the plaza outside the Department of Defense in Washington, D.C., was packed with reporters. News of a division commander holding a press conference had drawn massive attention. Sarah appeared in civilian clothes, not her uniform. Good afternoon, I'm Sarah Johnson. As she stepped to the microphone, the plaza fell silent. Hundreds of camera flashes went off as reporters waited. I'm not here as a division commander, but as a mother and a citizen who believes in justice. Her voice trembled, but was resolute. For the past month, my son, Private Ethan Carter, has suffered organized, relentless assault at Fort Bragg's basic training unit. The perpetrator is Sergeant Michael Brooks, and this incident has been covered up under orders from military leadership. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A general exposing military corruption was unheard of. Here is the audio evidence of the assaults. Sarah held up the USB and flashes intensified. And this is proof of high-ranking officials, including the Army Deputy Chief of Staff, ordering the cover-up. The crowd went silent as she played the recordings. The raw sounds of Brooks's violence and the leadership's conspiracy filling the air. I'm standing here not just for my son, but to ensure this never happens again. Tears welled in Sarah's voice. For over 20 years, I've served this country with pride, protecting our nation. But right now, the military is failing to protect our sons. The atmosphere grew heavy. Many reporters and onlookers nodded in agreement. As of this moment, I'm removing my division commander insignia. Sarah unpinned her rank, and the plaza went still. No one had expected this. I choose a mother's conscience over military honor, human justice over institutional logic. Applause broke out, starting with a few but soon spreading as everyone stood, moved by her courage. After the conference, Sarah checked her phone. Dozens of missed calls, mostly from the Department of Defense and Army headquarters. But one message stood out. From Daniel Harris, General, thank you for your brave decision. Real change is coming. Sarah smiled. Though she'd given up her rank, she felt she was finally starting something meaningful. Within hours, the nation was in an uproar. Every news outlet ran the story as their top headline. And online, support for Sarah flooded in. Headlines like "A mother who gave up her stars and true courage" dominated. But the backlash was fierce. That night, Sarah received an urgent summons from the Secretary of Defense for charges of insubordination and leaking classified information. The next morning, as she arrived at the Department of Defense, hundreds of civilians gathered outside with signs. We support Sarah Johnson and end military violence. In the Secretary's office, the Secretary of Defense, Army Chief of Staff, and Deputy Chief of Staff awaited her. The mood was hostile. Miss Johnson, not General anymore, I presume. Do you realize the consequences of what you did yesterday? The Secretary's voice was thick with anger. I told the truth. The truth? Your so-called truth is shaking the entire Department of Defense. Congress is planning to grill us, and public trust in the military is at an all-time low. Sarah stood firm. Then you should have handled it properly from the start. If you hadn't covered it up, this wouldn't have happened. The Deputy Chief of Staff interjected, Sarah, you still don't get it. You could face a court-martial for insubordination and leaking secrets. Secrets? Protecting criminals is a national secret, Sarah shot back, making his face flush. Just then, the Secretary's aide rushed in. Sir, the President has issued an urgent directive. The Secretary's face fell as he read the document. The President had ordered a full investigation into the case and requested Sarah's testimony at a congressional hearing. The tide had turned. They could no longer pressure her. A week later, Sarah testified at the congressional hearing, broadcast live nationwide. In a calm but firm voice, she recounted everything. My son's ordeal isn't just a personal tragedy. It exposes systemic issues in our military. The hearing uncovered more truths. Brooks had a history of abusing recruits, always covered up, and such practices were routine in the unit. The Deputy Chief of Staff resigned, and Brooks and implicated officers faced court-martials. Colonel Hayes was also punished for the cover-up. A month later, Sarah visited Ethan in the hospital. He'd improved significantly, recovering through consistent psychiatric care. Mom, I saw the news. You did something incredible. Ethan's voice carried a hint of his old brightness. Ethan, I didn't do it alone. We did it together. Mom, I want to go back to the military. Sarah was stunned. After such trauma, he wanted to return? Are you sure? Will you be okay? Yeah, I believe things will change now, and I want to be part of that change, to carry on what you started. Sarah hugged him tightly, proud of his growth. Months later, Sarah took on a new role as the Department of Defense's Human Rights Ombudsman, heading a new division to address military human rights issues. Though she no longer wore a rank, it was her most fulfilling work yet. Ethan fully recovered and returned to service, now advocating for recruits' rights, inspiring many soldiers with his story. One evening, Sarah and Ethan walked along the Potomac River. Ethan, do you ever regret it? If we'd stayed quiet, life could have been simpler. Mom, simple isn't always best. Sometimes, you have to stand up for what's right. Sarah smiled, feeling her son's growth. That night, she slept soundly for the first time in ages, filled with satisfaction from a meaningful victory. More than anything, the time she and Ethan overcame together would remain a cherished memory for life. That's the story for today. Thank you for staying with us. I hope this brought a bit of warmth to your day. Why not share your thoughts in the comments? Let's connect through our stories. Thank you.